Welcome to our home. We are excited to have you with us as we continue our study of the Old Testament this year. Specifically today, we're studying Moses chapter 7 and the Pearl of Great Price. We're looking forward to learning some important doctrines and principles of the gospel and encourage you to be studying and looking for your principles, those that stand out most to you. We continue to encourage you to think about the doctrines and principles that matter in our world today and how you can apply these principles in your own personal life. Today, we're going to be looking at three main principles associated with doctrines. These principles are focusing on Heavenly Father's perspective clarifies purpose, becoming one is becoming Zion, and love compels us to willingly sacrifice. We're looking forward to this study with you today. Welcome to Grounded, where women and men of all ages, nationalities, and backgrounds gather together with me, Barbara Morgan Gardner, and my guests as we strive to gain a bedrock understanding of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ and become more like Him. Today, we're absolutely ecstatic to have our dear friend with us, Sui Lang L. Panoke. Sui Lang, thank you for joining us.
Such an honor to be here, Barbara.
You are a visionary leader, a social entrepreneur, an international trainer, and you have passion for empowering today's leaders to rethink, create, and innovate. So, I love this. You are the founder of Rethink International, which is a global social enterprise designed to challenge people to rethink how and what they think. That's powerful. We have a lot to discuss.
Yep.
So you've recently served as the Senior Vice President of Culture for Zion's Bank. And in 2009, you founded the Women's Political Media, a global leadership and media training organization charged with diversifying political leadership and democratizing the media landscape. I mean, you are a leader, and we're talking leadership today. So this is powerful, rethinking leadership. I can't wait to learn more here with you today as we study Moses 7. And I can't wait to learn more about you and what you're doing off the camera as well.
Thanks so much for the invitation, Barbara. I look forward to rethinking with you as well.
I say that we are dear friends. It feels like it, but here's the reality. I'm going to tell my audience, our audience. We met in the bathroom just not too long ago, as women sometimes do.
Conversations happen in the ladies' room.
They do, don't they? I could tell you're grounded in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I needed you in my home. So thank you for being willing to do so.
I'm truly honored. I was immediately connected to your energy.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled that we are friends now.
Yes.
And excited to dive into this conversation with you.
All right, let's do it then. Okay, so we have been looking at the Old Testament. We've been looking specifically in Moses and Genesis lately, and we finished this last week talking about Enoch and his leadership. And so as we start, I want to just look a little bit. We're in Moses chapter 7, again, as I mentioned. Enoch's this incredible leader. He starts out just not wanting to be a leader. He's wondering why the Lord is calling upon him. And then we see him now in chapter 7. He's going to lead not only himself as he's following Jesus Christ, but an entire group of people, a city of Zion who are going to be translated. I mean, this is leadership at its finest, right? Within this leadership, though, and his responsibilities, it is clear that individuals need to make their own decisions. And Zion doesn't just happen. So with that, a little bit of background, talking about Enoch, I want to start with our first topic, which is focusing on heavenly perspective clarifies purpose. So can you guide us through that a little bit, Sui Lang?
Thank you so much for sharing that background, Barbara. What I found most fascinating, especially about this particular chapter, is the vast perspective, right? Panoptic perspective that Enoch has, being able to see the past, the present, and the future all at a glance, and having that perspective shifts the way that he teaches, the way that he leads. And to your point earlier, I find it fascinating and kind of ironic how it's the very leaders that don't necessarily see themselves as leaders that end up being the best leaders, right?
Yeah.
Because they lead with humility and love and grace, and people are just naturally drawn to follow them. So I'm really grateful for that perspective, because oftentimes when I find myself in despair or frustrated, right, I'm focusing too much on the minute things and taking a step back and reminding myself of the big picture. Those little things become less significant. And so that's how I've oftentimes brought peace back to my heart.
It's really good. As you're talking, I hadn't made this connection before, but when you're looking at Moses, chapter 7, what's happening with Enoch, and you're talking about his humility, it's really his Christ-like attributes, right? I mean, he's this humility and this patience, this mercy, this grace that he has. It reminds me of all of these times that he is being told by the Lord. He says in verse 4, I saw the Lord and he stood before my face and he walked with me, which is an incredible theme that's happening right now with the young women and young men in the church. And he says, even as a man talketh one with another face to face. And he said unto me, look, and I will show unto thee the world for the space of many generations. And then throughout this, verse 6, he says, look, and I looked, right? And he says this, verse 9, look, and I looked. And as I think about what you're saying here, this big perspective, it's a perspective that he gave to Moses a few chapters before this. It's a perspective, you reminded me of 1 Nephi 13, where the Lord says to Nephi, look, and I looked, right? And look, and I looked. He kept doing this until it's almost like his eyes were open to a view that Nephi, who had just left this promised land, seeing like Jerusalem, it's not really, I mean, he had to leave, but it's a time of sorrow. It's a time of leaving friends, family, money, all these worldly things. And the Lord is kind of saying to him, let me show you a bigger picture, because right now you're kind of in the thick of thin things. Like it's kind of mucky right now, but let me show you something bigger.
That's right. I love everything that you just recounted there. The one piece that I think is so profound is that the Lord met with him face to face. And as we're moving more towards this digital world, right, meeting face to face, even having face to face conversations like this one are becoming more rare, you know, than common. So I think it's really important to have that exchange of energy, that connection. And if you are in a position similar to what the Lord was in this circumstance, if you're going to provide instruction and guidance to one of your disciples, it is so important that you make that initial connection in person, face to face, and sharing that insight with them so they could take it on. He also talks about being clothed upon with glory.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I don't know if he could do that over a Zoom meeting, right? But just that face-to-face interaction is so critical here and important. And when it comes to perspective, and I'm a political science major, and so I like to think
that's awesome.
The line, all politics is local, but the impact we have can be global, right?
Oh, yes.
So there's the local perspective, what's happening in our communities. And then there's the statewide perspective across communities across the Beehive State, for example. Then the national perspective, the global perspective, and then ultimately the eternal perspective, which is what Christ is outlining here for Enoch. And just think of how we would choose to move differently, how we would choose to think differently had we had that more vast panoptic perspective.
You bring such a good point in that face-to-face. I mean, that is something, you're right, we are getting away from, almost sometimes even as an excuse, I think, that we can just meet via Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, we have FaceTime. I'm very grateful for technology. I think about what's happened with the results of COVID. And sometimes we've been blessed by the reality of technology, but I hope we're not compromising the one-on-one. I hope we're not compromising the touch, the human relationships, the looking at each other eye to eye, sitting with each other heart to heart as much as we can. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. And with this rapid advancement of technology, sometimes I wonder, in the growth of AI, all of these tools, are we designing humans out of the human experience? Because if we could be replaced by all of these machines, what's left for us, right? You cannot replace that energy, that connection that you feel with people in these face-to-face engagements.
Even Elder Bednar has talked to us as leaders, and specifically because I work with young adults a lot. He's talked to the young adults about AI and the good and the bad of AI, and so much good. The church has resources on AI now.
That's great.
But I love how he talks about truth, and he specifically warns young adults in his fireside to young adults. He warns them to be careful not to replace humanity, relationships with AI. So yes, I mean I think we're seeing this, and I think one of the things also in Moses 7 that we're seeing is this. This is an emotional chapter. Like these are people who are sharing feelings together. And to me, when I see this, I'm seeing, talk about seeing this heavenly perspective, thinking celestial, as President Nelson would say, right? We're seeing that here at the beginning as he's being shown things. We're going to see it later on as we get into this, where the Lord is going to be weeping over what he's seeing, and Enoch is going to be weeping with the Lord, right? It's almost like these two dear friends. There's this serious mentorship going on between Jesus Christ and Enoch. And had they been separate, I don't know that it would have had the effect, but it seems as if they're together, learning together, experiencing this together, where they can have a conversation back and forth.
Have you ever been in a room when someone started crying and you couldn't help but join them
Yes.
in
Yes.
crying? Like, I hear women say this all the time: no one cries alone in my presence. And so there's just something that you can't deny, right? When you're sitting in a room with someone. And I believe that truly is a form of divine communication and connection that we have been blessed with.
Just a question. I recognize, and we mentioned this just about your biography, that you have had a lot of international, global experience.
Yeah.
How has having a global/international experience impacted or affected your local experience, your local decisions, your local life? Does that make sense?
My immediate response is exposure, exposure, exposure. When you are exposed to different types of personalities, different cultures, different regions of the world, it again goes back to the whole panoptic view that the Lord is showing Enoch. It expands your point of view. So I would absolutely say the international experience that I've had professionally has absolutely shaped my perspective and strategies in doing work locally. And I think it absolutely is what makes the difference in having that impact that you hope to have and being less effective. So not everybody has the opportunity or privilege to travel the world or even know so many people from so many different multicultural backgrounds, depending on where you live. But that's another benefit to having the internet, right?
True, yes.
To having Netflix, right? I mean, there are ways to learn and receive information about different types of people and cultures that can also shape and form your perspectives as well.
I appreciate that. And I also love to travel. It's one thing that is extremely important to me. I love the perspectives. I love meeting people from various religions and cultures. And I understand also that many can't and or don't have that desire necessarily to.
Yeah.
But I noticed in chapter 7, it's interesting because we have that says that as they are looking together and as Enoch is looking, he's noticing the people of Canaan, and then we have Shem, and then we have Sharon and Omner and Enoch and Hananiah and all these different people of seemingly different backgrounds, and even so much that they're in a different position, each of them. I mean, we've seen this in the Book of Mormon as well, as Alma's being called to talk to these different individuals and different societies, different cultures. We have this one verse in here where it says, "For behold, the Lord shall curse the land with much heat, and the barrenness thereof shall go forth forever. And there was a blackness that came upon all the children of Canaan, that they were despised among the people." As we've both traveled throughout the world, and you especially with your professional assignments and other things that you've done in your life, how do you handle, what do you think about verses like this? How do you tie this in?
God, that's a great question. And I've thought about this particular verse a lot.
Yeah.
I choose in other people of color that I know who are members of our faith community, view this as more of intended to be taken in more of a figurative sense than a literal sense.
Yep.
I don't necessarily think it's referring to the color of a person's skin, but more so the light or darkness that may exist within them.
I love that, by the way, and I am in agreement with that. I think that there is a difference, and we see later how we're talking about the blackness covering the earth. It's a darkness, right? It's a darkness that covers the earth. It's tied to, later on we'll talk about Satan and these chains. That's the kind of blackness that's coming upon them. It's a darkness. It's a maybe even a hopelessness that's happening among the people there.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopelessness, the sadness, the despair. And I feel like the Lord is constantly using kind of a light spectrum, if you will, as it pertains to Zion is going to be on the lightest and brightest side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And then those who follow Satan or fall victim to Satan are going to fall on the darker end of that scale.
Oh, excellent way of describing that. Thank you.
So that's how I've kind of viewed that.
I was thinking as we're talking about this overall perspective, this perspective of the entire world and over time. It's not just a moment in time. It seems that he's seeing the world and he's also seeing time as he's drawing us closer to the millennium, as he's drawing us closer to the second coming of Jesus Christ. So he's seeing the beginning and the end, and he's seeing the expanse of the universe. I think for me personally, it's important to see that we have leaders of the church, the prophets, seers and revelators, first presidency, quorum of the 12, but primarily the prophet, who not only has traveled the world and met with people of various cultures and things, but also he is a seer, just like the days of Enoch, just like the days of Moses, just like the days of Nephi. And he does have an eternal perspective. His stewardship is the world. And it's the world at this time, but he does have a bigger picture. He does see more. I know in my life, as I'm coming from Oregon, is where I'm originally from, and then living here in the Wasatch Front, I have a different perspective because I'm from Oregon. I see things a little bit differently. Politics is, I will say this, politics is different for me in Utah. Oregon was a different place to be raised than Utah. It's still different, right? It's just a little bit different.
Left of Utah, for sure.
Yes, definitely. And we see that in the world as well. And so one of the things I appreciate so much about our prophets, seers, and revelators today, which I see this with him there, is that there is a much bigger perspective. They see differently, perhaps, and have been given different views and optics of what's happening. So I would just throw out there as covenant leaders to be able to trust where we can and have faith and understanding that we have leaders who have been called of God to see. Right. And just understanding that our myopic perspective, sometimes where we are currently living at the time, may not be the seat that allows us to see the whole world.
Agreed.
Does that make sense?
So beautiful. So beautiful. I just wanted to share. So I have 3 homes, originally from Hawaii. So I was born in Honolulu, but then raised here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Studied political science at the University of Utah, then moved back to Washington, D.C. For grad school. And we lived on Capitol Hill for 13 years.
Wow.
And so just think of those vastly different regions, right?
Yes.
From Hawaii to Utah to Washington, D.C. But the one thing that I've taken from living in each of those different places is the value systems that exist there.
Yeah.
I would describe Utah faith, family, community. That's what drives our community.
Yeah, that's
our
really
culture here in Utah. Back in Washington, D.C., it's power, influence, wealth. Right? And those 6 values aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
Right.
They're just different. And so being exposed to these different types of cultures driven by these different sets of values has shaped me as an individual, as a leader. And I describe it as the concept of bridge building, right? Going to the margins and working your way in. And what's really happening in this chapter is God is outlining all the conflict that's happening amongst these different groups of people. And then Enoch is coming in, outlining the plan to create them all, bring them all under one community, one Zion. And having exposure to those different people, that's what humbles us. That's what shifts our perspectives about those that may be different from us. And my biggest compassion and empathy goes to those who have been mistreated or treated differently because of characteristics about themselves that are beyond their control. So I think that's a huge lesson to be learned in this section as well.
Hello, my dear friends. Before we jump into our next topic, I'd like to invite you to just think about what you are learning, what you are feeling, what you are seeing, and what matters to you. I'd like you to think about someone that you could actually share this podcast with. We would like to flood the earth with the truths of the gospel of Jesus Christ. As women, we have been asked to speak up and speak out. We want to share the light of Jesus Christ throughout the world, and we would love your help in doing so. Oh, Sui Lang, I can't agree with you more. And that really brings us into our second principle that we mentioned at the beginning, was becoming one is becoming Zion. We have to become one to become Zion. Zion doesn't just happen. And that's one of the reasons why I love that all these different cities and things are listed. I love that we're seeing this anger in the world and this righteousness in the world. And I love this, it sounds horrible, but this strong influence of Satan that he just wants to destroy. And then, this turmoil we see in our world today, the call from our leaders to be peacemakers. We see it from especially our religious leaders, and not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're seeing it from multiple religious leaders and government leaders to be peacemakers, to bring us together as a people. And I will say, I love that you said that. It is I want to say almost incumbent upon us as we try to be peacemakers in the world and dealing with religious freedom and dealing with other people, that we listen and we learn and we study about different people, cultures, communities, that we understand religious differences and similarities, so that we can have these communication tools, in a sense, to build this Zion. It's hard to build Zion if Zion is everyone in the world. If we are trying to bring everyone in the world to be one, it's hard to do that if we don't know them, right?
That's right.
Again, I want to be sensitive to people who haven't had those opportunities, but you brought out a great point. I watched a video with Elder Bednar and Elder Cook recently on the Muslim faith. And, this is a few years ago. So what Mormons can learn about Muslims. And Elder Christopherson was trying to teach members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about Muslims. And he was taking out some of those false ideas or misconceptions that we have about other faiths and other people. It's critical that we do this. This is a world. It's
so
not
timely.
just, yes.
So timely, especially with that faith. I think it's really important to recognize that Utah and the restored gospel on this earth was founded upon religious freedom.
Yes.
And really finding, commonality amongst the interfaith community. And the Muslim community right here in Utah has significantly grown. And we have a lot more in common than not. And if we're going to live together in the same community, I think it's worth getting to know what those differences are and what those commonalities are, and finding ways to bridge, right, those differences for the overall health of uplifting our communities.
This brings us into these scriptures, back into Moses chapter 7. Again, I know we've been there, but I love verse 16 and kind of going forward. He says, "From the time forth, there were wars and bloodsheds among them, but the Lord came and dwelt with his people, and they dwelt in righteousness." So among all of this wickedness that's going on throughout the world, the Lord comes and dwells with a people who are trying to be righteous. And then he says, "The fear of the Lord was upon all nations. So great was the glory of the Lord, which was upon his people. And the Lord blessed the land, and they were blessed upon the mountains and upon the high places, and did flourish. And the Lord called his people Zion, because they were of one heart and one mind, and dwelt in righteousness, and there was no poor among them." And Enoch continued his preaching in righteousness unto the people of God. And it came to pass in his days that he built a city that was called the City of Holiness, even Zion. And it came to pass that Enoch talked with the Lord, and he said unto the Lord, "Surely Zion shall dwell in safety forever." But the Lord said unto Enoch, "Zion have I blessed, but the residue of the people have I cursed." And so then we're being taught about Zion, and we're being taught about these people who live together in peace and righteousness, and they become one. So I'm wondering, I know you have experience in helping people become one. And in a sense, to me, that's creating Zion. Can you teach us? What are some things that you've learned? What are some prophetic teachings? What are some of your experiences on becoming one and also creating Zion?
Well, thank you so much for laying out that background, going back to verse 18, which is the main verse that I pulled out from the entire chapter, calling his people Zion because they were of one heart and one mind. In doing culture work, again, first and foremost, it's most important to find those commonalities. And generally what I've found to be most successful and effective in doing this is going back to the values and guiding principles of that which brings you together. So whether it be a faith community, whether it be a local community, or whether it be an organization or corporation, just a little bit of my professional background. So before I moved back to Salt Lake City back in 2017, we lived on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. for 13 years. In the last 5 years, I had the privilege of serving as Relief Society president of the Capitol Hill Ward.
Wow.
And in Ward Council, our theme for our ward was building Zion on Capitol Hill.
Wow, that is great. That's amazing.
Such a powerful thing, right?
Oh, that's powerful.
And I think we collectively, that's another key piece to doing this culture work and bringing together as people together as one, it has to be done collectively. No one person can be the sole leader or even responsible for success or ineffectiveness of doing this work. When I moved back to Salt Lake City, I then took a role at Zion's Bank, leading culture for Zion's Bank. So there I am carrying the torch of Zion again. Internally, the work that we were doing there, we developed what we called the One Zion's employee resource groups, the One Zion's Council, which sought to drive a culture of community and togetherness inside of the bank. At the same time, the governor was launching the One Utah initiative. Nationally, Pledge of Allegiance refers to one nation. One of my favorite artists is Bob Marley, his famous song, One Love,
I love it.
And then bring it all back to Christ and our Heavenly Father. We believe in one God and in his Son and in the Holy Ghost, that Holy Trinity that guides us through our day-to-day. So this oneness, this concept of oneness starts with us each as individuals, and this spans across the entire globe and then ultimately on our road back to heaven.
You bring that up in Moses chapter 6, right before, in fact, the verse right before chapter 7 that we're studying, it actually says, the Lord actually says, "And thou art after the order of him who is without beginning of days or end of years, from all eternity to all eternity. Behold, thou art one in me, a son of God, and thus may all become my sons." And I always put, anytime I see sons like that, because it's a covenant term, sons and daughters, right? We know Emma was considered a daughter of God in the covenant form relationship. And Mosiah, King Benjamin teaches about that in Mosiah, that the sons and daughters of God are those who desire to become one. And I think it's fascinating that they're desiring to take upon them his name. They all want to have the name of Christ written upon their hearts. Women and men together, becoming one with each other, and more importantly, becoming one with Christ, aligning their wills with him, taking upon them his yoke and being literally yoked as one, right?
So beautiful, so powerful.
Yeah.
And those pronouns absolutely do make a difference, I think, especially for women internalizing these scriptures. I actually have some friends, some sisters back in Washington who would literally read the scriptures and change all of the pronouns to she and her, just to have a more personal, deeper connection with the sacred content that they were, internalizing. But I also do appreciate that he refers to Zion in the feminine text.
Absolutely.
Referring to Zion as her. So
yeah,
I think that's powerful.
I do too.
I don't know if that's coincidental or intentional.
I don't know either, but I love this from President Eyring. Speaking of Zion, to the women of the church, he actually says, "You will be an essential force in the gathering of Israel and in the creation of a Zion people." When I think of Zion, it's also the temple. The temple is often talked about in a female pronoun, right?
And so is earth.
And earth. I know that there's an extremely important role that women are playing, and that we need both women and men to work together in creating Zion. Sometimes we perhaps may feel a little left out. And frankly, I love that you have friends that are saying, let's put the female pronoun, because there's a reality in this. It's not that we're changing identity. We're not saying this is no longer about men. It's just simply saying it can apply to me. If I'm willing and able to put my pronoun in there, my female pronoun in there, then I can actually internalize this a little bit better. I think that's fantastic.
Whatever helps people, come closer and become one with God.
Yeah.
I support.
That is so good. Let me ask you this then. We talked about Zion becoming one. What destroys Zion?
Such a great question. I would say focusing on that which makes us different from one another. There's so many divisions,
It's good, yeah.
Especially in today's world, as we were reading about those communities and groups of people that were at odds with one another. I mean, that's basically happening today, in modern times. And so if we focus on that which is different, then that leads to frustration and division and just remaining at odds with one another. But if we focus on that which we have in common, right, which is generally the love, forgiveness, the just all of those things that bring us closer together, that give you that warm and fuzzy feeling inside.
Yeah.
That is what I have seen to be the most effective way to build that oneness within any given community.
I think it's interesting, and you're really bringing us into this next topic of love compels us to willingly sacrifice. I think it's interesting that in these next verses, we see some real polarization going on here. In fact, this is extreme polarization, I would say. Starting in verse 26, or even before that, starting in verse 24. And there came generation upon generation, and Enoch was high and lifted up, even in the bosom of the Father and of the Son of Man. And behold, the power of Satan was upon all the face of the earth. So he sees Satan. And then he says, and he saw angels descending out of heaven, and he heard a loud voice saying, Woe, 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 be unto the inhabitants of the earth. And he beheld Satan, and he had a great chain in his hand, and it veiled the whole face of the earth with darkness. And he looked upon it and laughed, and his angels rejoiced. And Enoch beheld angels descending out of heaven, bearing testimony of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost, who fell on many, and they were caught up by the powers of the heaven into Zion. And it came to pass that God of heaven looked upon the residue of the people, and he wept. There is in this chapter, I didn't go through and count, but there are a number of verses in here. I'm just seeing 29 and 37 and 40 and 41 and 44. I mean, I'm just looking at my scriptures and just seeing the times that I have marked that God is weeping or that Enoch is weeping. And it is very hurtful to me that Satan is laughing while God is weeping. Like the polarity of what's going on there is so stark to me that Christ is crying and Satan is laughing. And what Satan is laughing about and what Christ is crying over is perhaps what's the sickest thing to me. He's laughing because of God's children hurting each other. So Enoch asks, why are you crying? I am God, man of holiness is my name, man of counsel is my name, and endless and eternal is my name. Like, this is who I am. And then it says in verse 33, I have said and also given commandments that they should love one another and that they should choose me their father. But behold, they are without affection and they hate their own blood. And Satan's laughing. And then he talks about, wherefore I can stretch forth mine hand and hold all the creations which I have made, and mine eye can pierce them also. And among all the workmanship of mine hands, there has not been so great wickedness among all the people. And it says, and the whole heavens shall weep over them, weeping, seeing that they suffer.
There's so much to unpack.
Oh
in
my
those
goodness.
passages.
Yes.
And this is the part we addressed earlier about this chapter being deeply emotional.
Yes.
We are finally seeing the Lord break down. I mean, he's weeping at the pain and suffering that his children that he created are facing and experiencing. And then here we have this Satan character that is mocking.
Yeah,
God,
mocking's a good word.
the creator. And what also pains me is to see other examples of this happening on earth today, right? The mockery. And I describe this image of Satan doing this. It's just wildly unattractive, right? When you think of that which you are attracted to, like light attracts light, right? And then are we really attracted to that type of response, right? Emotional response. And oftentimes we think about emotional responses. Sometimes when people are pitted against one another, their whole goal is to get an emotional response from the other person. And I could see Satan in his mind thinking he won, right?
Yeah.
Because here he's seeing these two great leaders having an emotional response, when in actuality, it was their deliverance. Because to me, as someone in a mortal body, seeing my creator weeping, that builds that connection to me. He's just like me.
That is beautiful.
That connection, that heart connection, there's nothing stronger.
So this is a sacrifice of Jesus Christ. This is a sacrifice of the Father, that we are his children, and the ultimate sacrifice is Christ's atonement. And it's that love that comes from her. Satan doesn't understand this love. He doesn't understand this sacrifice. He doesn't understand the motivation behind it. So what can you teach us about this love and sacrifice, this principle of the gospel, the willing sacrifice?
So first, I'd like to paint this picture for every member of your audience.
Please.
To consider.
Okay.
That we are up there in heaven with the Lord and Enoch looking down on this dark ball of, darkness.
Yeah.
The chain wrapped around it. Are we willing to go down there and help do the work, or are we comfortable in heaven? Because it's no easy feat, right? Would you be willing to dive really into a sea of darkness with the hope to shift whatever's going on there and bring light into this world? Again, no easy feat. Initially, when I asked myself that question, I was on the fence. And then as it sat with me and I really took it into my heart, I ended up finding myself in a place of mercy and having mercy upon those people. And like, we need to help these people. And if the Lord is going to give us what is needed to help them, are we willing to do that? The answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes. And I think that's why all of us are here on earth today. It also brought me to a story. I recently lost my father a couple of months ago in the middle of October. And my father was 87 years old. So my father was born in 1938 in this small town called Nanakuli, on the west side of Oahu, which is where overwhelming majority of Native Hawaiians live on that side of the island. He was 3 years old when the bombing of Pearl Harbor happened. And it was in December 1941. And he remembers playing on the beach that day. It was a Sunday morning. He's 3 years old. And he remembers seeing all of the planes like flying over his head. And his cousins and his brothers were also with him on the beach. And they see a plane crash into the ocean.
Oh my goodness.
Just off the coast of the beach that they were playing on. And without a thought, his cousins, his brothers dove into the ocean and ended up saving this pilot. So just
what in the world?
With the complexities in that one scenario for a moment, right? Those young men didn't see an enemy attack. What they saw was a life worth saving. And they were willing to sacrifice their own lives to save another. So I can't think of a greater example, right? Of that true loving sacrifice that you're talking about, which is probably the most important principle that we've discussed today. And for each of us to reflect upon what is the condition of my heart?
Yeah.
You know, am I willing to sacrifice what I have for the sake of saving another soul? And to what extent, you know, am I willing to do that? And what can I do to keep my heart in that condition to continue saving souls throughout whatever time frame I'm honored to live on this earth?
I love that point too of what do you want to do to keep your heart in that frame? I mean, I think of Enoch here in this story, which I think we could understand. Enoch is dealing with serious wickedness. I'm sure he has been accused of a number of things. I'm sure he has dealt with people that are causing major problems for him, for his family, for those he loves. Clearly, he's living among them, right? The Lord is living among them with Enoch, but Enoch is on the earth. It is so easy to become hardened. It's so easy to just make a stone of our heart.
And shut
build
ourselves
defenses.
off from the rest of the world.
And to be fair, Enoch struggled. It says in verse 44, this one I get. He says, and Enoch saw this. He had bitterness of soul and wept over his brethren and said unto the heavens, I will refuse to be comforted. Like that's the kind of, like he's a real person here. And then he says, but the Lord said unto Enoch, lift up your heart and be glad and look. So to your point, we have this story in the Doctrine and Covenants that many have studied, especially with the Doctrine and Covenants last year. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's Thomas B. Marsh. And he's protecting his wife. You can tell his wife has been accused of kind of stealing the cream and not being quite honest with this. The reality is, Sui Lang, is we actually don't know if it's true or not. A part of me wants to believe that it actually is true, and he was protecting his wife, and he's not gonna put up with this. And there are humans that are making decisions. I don't know, but it was so bad, and other things added onto it that he got so upset that he left the church over it, right? And it was just hurt by it. And I think in cases like this, where Enoch, he all of us have a decision.
Yeah.
You know, and what you're saying there is we have to keep our hearts soft. It is hard to have hearts that are soft in the middle of
difficult.
all of this.
People offend you, people shun you, people ignore you and disrespect you. And how are we going to respond, right? One key lesson that I've learned in doing this type of work is to be sensitive to people's sensitivities. Because that one accusation made the difference.
Yes. That is a very
That's
important principle to learn. It really is, right?
It really is.
To be sensitive to people's sensitivities. We talk about, Moses needs to climb the mountain to be with Christ. Enoch is climbing this mountain. At the same time, Christ is also coming to us, and he's walking with us, right? He's walking with Enoch as Enoch is climbing this mountain. And so it's kind of what you're saying
So
there
cool.
is, right? Like, meet people where they are.
Where they are.
Care about their suffering, because what you suffer over may not be what I'm suffering over. Shortly after my mother passed away, I was really struggling with her passing. And shortly after, a few months later, my husband's mother passed away. He wasn't my husband at the time. It was my boyfriend's mother passed away. And I got it. Like, the empathy that I felt in that moment was so strong and so real that in some ways it healed me. The empathy healed me. The love healed me. I saw that later, as after Dustin's father had passed away. We were married now. And then not too long after, my father passed away. And I saw that his empathy for me healed so much of that brokenness, right? And I think that is the love of God that's happening there. That's, I think of the weeping that's happening between God and Enoch, and even the earth. The earth weeps. What I love here is it says, lift up your heart and be glad, and then look. And so now, rather than seeing the wickedness and Satan laughing, now we're seeing the righteousness. We're seeing the families of the earth. We're seeing Jesus Christ and his blood and his righteousness. We're seeing in verse 47, the Son of Man, even in the flesh. And it says, and his soul rejoiced, saying, the righteous is lifted up, and the Lamb is slain from the foundation of the world. And through faith, I am in the bosom of the Father, and behold, Zion is with me. I just love that he's saying, in all of this wickedness, don't let it destroy you, because Jesus Christ, I am coming, right? And I am taking them into my bosom. And those who are desiring to be righteous will be with me. And he says in verse 50, it came to pass that Enoch continued his cry unto the Lord, saying, I ask thee, O Lord, in the name of thine only begotten, even Jesus Christ, that thou wilt have mercy upon Noah and his seed, that the earth might never more be covered with the flood. And then the covenant that God makes with him, I'm not going to flood the earth again. I covenant this with you. And he sees this again in verse 53. And I love this phrase. The Lord said, blessed is he through whose seed Messiah shall come. For he saith, I am the Messiah, the King of Zion. I love that.
I love that.
The rock of heaven, which is as broad as eternity, who cometh in at the gate and climbeth up by me, shall never fall. Wherefore, blessed are they of whom I have spoken, for they shall come forth with songs of everlasting joy. I mean, this is...
Wow, what a grand...
Yeah, Enoch, don't give up. Like, you're in the middle of the thickness and the darkness and the chains. But Christ is going to come, and he is going to make a covenant with the people. And then he says in verse 55, look, and I looked, and then he talks about how they will be crowned at the right hand of the Son of Man with crowns of glory. Like, it may look ugly right now, but it's going to be fantastic. These people will be crowned, and they will be joining together with the King of Zion, Jesus Christ.
So beautiful. And that reminds me of one of my father's favorite songs that he used to sing, called The Labor of Love.
Oh.
And the last line in the song is, for I know if I serve with the labor of love, I will glorify my Father above.
Oh.
And that's
Sui
exactly
Lang.
what he's describing in that verse. Being, basking, being clothed in the glory of God. What a fantastic thought, right? That we know will become our reality if we stay on this path.
Don't you love your dad?
I do. I carry on my heart every day.
We talk so much about women on this podcast and how grateful we are for the righteous, good, solid men in our lives. I miss my dad too. I mean, really, what a blessing. My dad was born in 1933, and I remember him talking about World War II. And you know what? I remember him saying a few things that were really impactful to me. Speaking of this love of people, he really struggled with the Japanese concentration camps as a child. And he had friends that were taken and their families. And you're talking about the Zion. It's so healthy for us to weep over inequalities.
Yeah.
And God weeps over inequalities and any form of racism. He wants us to be one heart, one mind, dwell in righteousness, no poor among us. Zion is the pure in heart, right?
Absolutely. Well, just one other piece about my father's story. His family played a critical role in the immediate response to the local communities there. 10 years later is when he was invited to church by a neighbor.
What?
And was baptized in the ocean at the age of 13. He would then move on to become the very first missionary representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from that part of the island, serving in the South Asia mission in Taiwan, speaking Mandarin Chinese. But at the tender age of 3, right, that impression, that experience that he had, he would take and it would shape the rest of his life.
That is incredible. I see that this is so important that we continue to teach. And as we are preparing the world for the second coming of Jesus Christ, it is beginning to become worse and worse. It's hard to believe, but it is going to become worse. And we are going to have to be discerners of truth, and we are going to have to be able to stand strong and be full of love and sacrifice at a level that we probably haven't been asked. Many of us haven't been asked to sacrifice yet. But we have these great examples of these prophets. We have this great example of your father. We have incredible examples of women in the scriptures. I automatically go to Esther, who we will talk about later, who were really willing to put their lives on the line for the covenant people of God and for all of God's children, frankly. So thank you. Before we close, is there anything else that you would really like to share in this context, in this chapter?
The last thing, just in my study in preparation for today, I was drawn to Elder Christofferson's talk called Come to Zion. And I just wanted to share this one piece. If we would establish Zion in our homes, our branches, wards, and stakes, we must rise to this standard. It will be necessary, number 1, to become unified in one heart and one mind. Number 2, to become individually and collectively a holy people. And 3rd, to care for the poor and needy with such effectiveness that we eliminate poverty among us. And this is my favorite line that wraps up our entire conversation today, really, is we cannot wait until Zion comes for these things to happen. Zion will come only as they happen. So we are Zion. It is our responsibility. We are the torch bearers of bringing Zion into fruition and establishing his kingdom here on this earth. And so we can't just sit idly by and just wait for the announcement to come. Oh, Zion has arrived. Let's get our things. Let's get our ducks in a row. Yeah. No, it is a daily effort on part of each one of us who knows what is at stake here. There's a lot at stake, right? And the sense of urgency is now. And so may we just continue to love on one another, continue to feast upon the words and teachings of Christ, and continue to gather his people in his name.
That is so good and so profound. Zion doesn't just happen. We build it in everything we do. I appreciate, yes, in the homes.
I wish I could just hire a contractor.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, create Zion. Thank you. Here's your paycheck, right? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Blank check. It's a blank check, too.
It's a blank check. Whatever it takes. Just build it.
But then we would
build
miss
it for
out,
me. Yes.
right, on all the blessings that come with the process.
I hate to admit it, but if I'm paying somebody else a check for creating Zion, I'm probably not going to be in Zion. It's probably going to be transcended, and it's probably going to be transfigured without me. Yeah.
We're going about this the wrong way.
That reminds me of my daughter, Jane, when she was 10 years old, which she is right now. It was not too long ago. She says, I can't be happy and kind because I'm hungry. It's making me angry.
She is my heart. She is my heart. I'm hypoglycemic.
There you go.
So I need food every 2 hours, really, or I'm going to be grumpy.
Yeah, well, you understand then.
I can relate.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's real. Creating Zion is real. And I think for us as women, it has to be a very intentional desire. I know with me personally, I have to be more patient. I recognize I need to go to the Lord in prayer. I fast and pray. Just take off this rock on this side of me, take off this sliver here. If I can, help me to be a more merciful person, help me to be a more gracious person. Like these Christ-like qualities that we really do need. Yeah. It's not just that we're creating a Zion people. We have to be a Zion. I have to be a Zion Christ-like person to create Zion in my home. It comes right down to my heart. Where is my heart in this? That's right. Do I want to? I love taking people on church history trips and churches in different places throughout the world, really. Jerusalem, etc. I'd love to sign you up. But that's one of the things we say is, let's create Zion on this bus. In my classroom at BYU, let's create Zion in this class. Let's be one. In my home, let's create Zion. But everywhere we go, let's be a Zion creator. It doesn't mean we're perfect, but it means we're trying. It's an intentional What are we doing?
I think we get points for the effort.
Absolutely we do. Because the reality is Zion is a gift. Zion is a gift. Yes, we create it, but what ultimately the real eternal Zion, exaltation, eternal life with God is a gift that only he can give. And it's only possible through his atonement, right? I mean,
and it's not about perfection.
No.
It's about progress.
Yes, becoming, right?
Yes.
It's about becoming.
That's right.
So if I can finish off then with just a couple of thoughts in Moses chapter 7, I appreciate in verse 67, he says, "And the Lord showed Enoch all things, even unto the end of the world, and he saw the day of the righteous, the hour of the redemption, and received a fullness of joy." So amidst all the things that he's seeing again that were wicked and ugly, he sees at the end a fullness of joy. I also loved in verse 69, "And Enoch and all his people," before it just says, "and Enoch walked with God," but here, verse 69, "And Enoch and all his people walked with God. And he dwelt in the midst of Zion. And it came to pass that Zion was not, for God received it up to his own bosom. And from thence went forth the saying, Zion is fled." I love that it's not just Enoch, all the people, the influence of one righteous covenant leader, one righteous covenant woman, in this case, one righteous covenant man. But it's again, that pronoun. Women, we have the ability to create Zion, and we've been asked to create Zion. The Zion's not going to happen without us. And then finally, this thought in verse 62, I love this as well, speaking of women. "And righteousness will I send down out of heaven, and the truth will send forth out of the earth, to bear testimony of mine only begotten, his resurrection from the dead, yea, and also the resurrection of all men, and righteousness and truth will I cause to sweep the earth, as with a flood, to gather out mine elect from the four quarters of the earth, unto a place which I shall prepare, an holy city, that my people may gird up their loins and be looking forth for the time of my coming. For there shall be called my tabernacle, and it shall be called Zion, a new Jerusalem." I just love, we've had President Nelson so often talking about the Christ at his second coming. And now we have President Oaks, who has recently talked about creating this eternal family reunion, which is to me like Zion.
Yeah.
A real family reunion when everyone is in there for the purpose of happiness and joy and bringing people to Christ. Not the bickering or the fighting or the making fun of, but the real Zion. There's going to be fun in some of this, right? I want to keep people a good sense of humor, because in our family, I don't know about yours, but the family reunions we have are pretty funny. We have some funny people,
Straight
including
comedy.
myself.
It's drama, it's comedy, it's satire.
All of that. And
good food.
And that's in
Always good
Zion.
food.
Yes, Zion definitely requires good food and a lot of good humor. So focusing on a heavenly perspective does clarify purpose. I think we've seen this heavenly perspective and this bigger view. So thank you for helping us see that. And then second, becoming one is required and is really becoming Zion. It's work. It is work.
Yes.
And then finally, love compels us to willingly sacrifice. And the perfect example of that is Jesus Christ, who did give all for us. And that ties us into recognizing the importance of the covenant and that Jesus Christ is the center of it, right? So as we talk about the doctrine of the gospel of Jesus Christ today, I would say we talked the doctrine of the plan of salvation, the doctrine of the atonement of Jesus Christ. And then these principles, these branches on the tree, are what we just discussed. This heavenly perspective, becoming one is becoming Zion, and love compelling us to willingly sacrifice.
Wow.
So thank you for walking us through these important doctrines and principles. And thank you also for helping us apply them in our lives, seeing a perspective that opens our minds to other opportunities, other people. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story of your dad. I mean, what an amazing story. Clearly the apple didn't fall far from that tree, right?
You're very kind.
Well,
very
it's
generous.
Very clear. We want to thank all of you as well. We know that you have your own application, and we know that there's so many principles that we did not get into in this chapter. We invite you, all of you listening, to continue to study this, to find more of these principles that the Lord wants you to learn. What stands out to you? What intentional actions are you going to take as application to these principles that God has taught through his prophets today? We invite you to write those down. We invite you to take those principles and write them into sentences and go forth the effort so that you can base your life on principle and on values, just as Sui Lang was talking to us about. We also invite you to continue to share this podcast with others, help people in this process of flooding the earth. We want people to come unto Christ. We recognize that there's wickedness in this world, and we also recognize the great light of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the importance of creating Zion. We want to be one together with you, with Christ in the center of it all. So thank you again for joining us on Grounded, and we'll see you next week.